Training Jiu-Jitsu and traveling around Australia has been on my bucket list for a long time, and recently I finally made it happen. I spent about 5 weeks in Australia, mostly in Melbourne and around Victoria, traveling, training Jiu-Jitsu, surfing and experiencing the wonderful nature of this part of the world. On my journey to becoming the best grappler I can be, my main goal for this trip was to gain experience in no-gi grappling. Most of my training back home is in the gi, and I felt like I was missing exposure to a huge part of the grappling world. So naturally, there was one place I had to go to, Absolute MMA, to train under Lachlan Giles. But this trip was so much more than just training. Going to Australia left an lasting impression on me, and I want to share this experience with you. My first morning in Australia felt really different to what I'm used to, but in a good way. We had some unexpected visitors during breakfast. And I remember waking up at like 5 AM in the morning because of all these insane bird sounds outside. Kookaburras, magpies, cockatoos, just screaming at full volume. At first, I had no idea what was going on. Everything felt different from back home. The nature, the sounds, the atmosphere, even the air smells different here. One thing I really wanted from this trip was to disconnect a bit. From routines, from noise, from constantly being around people and screens all day. And Australia was probably the perfect place for that. What amazed me the most was how much untouched land there is. I've never seen so much empty space before. No traffic, no city noise, no planes overhead. Sometimes not even a town nearby. Just silence. And honestly, at first that kind of silence almost felt uncomfortable because I'm used to stimulation all the time. But after a few days I really started enjoying it. It felt like my brain was finally slowing down. I think that feeling of being disconnected from everything back home really set the tone for the whole trip. So naturally, most of my days I spent outside of cities and just went into forests, parks and nature in general. And after spending the first days exploring nature and getting used to this completely different environment, I also wanted to do something I've always associated with Australia, surfing. Now to be clear, I still suck at surfing. But honestly, that's also what makes it fun for me right now. Every session feels like I improve at least a little bit, even if most of the time I'm just getting thrown around by the waves and it feels like I swallow like 5 liters of salt water every session. And still, being able to surf in Australia was just really cool. The beaches, the coastline, the atmosphere around surf culture there. It's hard not to enjoy it. Also, somehow the camera made the waves look super small. I promise you, they looked way bigger in real life. It is always funny to me when I look at the video footage of my surf classes and I realize what my best wave actually looked like. Kind of ridiculous and disappointing to be honest. Because once you're standing on the board, the wave feels so fast and powerful, and then you just realize the wave was just barely moving you forward. But still, I'm just having fun with it and enjoying the journey. Next to the nature and wildlife, one of the main reasons why I wanted to come to Australia in the first place was to train at Absolute MMA. If you've been around the no-gi scene for a while, you've probably heard of Lachlan Giles. He's one of the most respected grapplers in the world and has huge success in the highest level of the sport. So naturally, training at his gym was high on my list. And since one of my goals for this trip was to improve my no-gi grappling, it seemed like the perfect place to do it. Now, I do train no-gi back at home as well. But if I'm being honest, probably more than 90% of my mat time is still spent in the gi. So while no-gi isn't completely foreign to me, I definitely feel more comfortable when I can grab a collar and slow things down a little. In the gi, I feel like I can usually hold my own pretty well for my level. But in no-gi, some people absolutely wreck me. What surprised me the most was that some of those guys had trained way fewer years than I have. And I think that really shows how different the game can be. The biggest eye-opener for me was definitely leg locks. I feel like I understand the basic ideas behind them and I can usually recognize the positions. But the moment somebody grabbed my legs and actually knew what they were doing, I realized very quickly that I still have a lot to learn. The entries, the control, the transitions, the defense. There's a whole world that I haven't explored nearly enough yet. And honestly, that's exactly why I wanted to come here. I wanted to put myself in an environment where I wasn't the most comfortable person in the room. Because those are usually the situations where you learn the most. What stood out to me even more than the level of training was the atmosphere. For such a large and well-known gym, everyone was incredibly welcoming. Even Lachlan came up to me himself, asked where I was from, what I do and what brought me to Australia. It was just a normal conversation, but I don't take that for granted in a gym with that kind of reputation. The same was true for everyone else I met there. People trained hard, but they were friendly, helpful and always willing to share knowledge. Some rounds were rough, but I never felt like people were trying to prove something. Overall, it was just a really good training environment, and for me, that's one of the most important things a gym can have. Overall, it was just a really good training environment. And for me, that's one of the most important things a gym can have. One thing I really liked about training here was that people were competitive, but not in a way that felt hostile. Sometimes when you visit a new gym, people want to see what you've got straight away. At Absolute MMA, I didn't really get that feeling. The rounds were hard, but most people seemed genuinely interested in training and improving rather than trying to win every exchange. And for me, that's usually a sign of a really good gym. The better the room is, the less people seem to care about improving themselves. Sometimes I got my partners in a good position, but a lot of my no-gi rounds consisted of me trying to survive the round without getting tapped 5 times. Most of the things I remember from this trip have nothing to do with training at all. My strongest and coolest memories are from traveling around Victoria and around Uluru in the Northern Territory. This is one of the first trips where I put my training more in the background just to enjoy the awesome nature and wildlife the country has to offer. Most days were pretty simple. Just getting in the car, driving for hours and stopping wherever it felt right. And one thing that honestly never got old for me was the wildlife. Seeing animals everywhere just stayed exciting the whole time. Kangaroos standing next to the road, sometimes in groups of dozens or even hundreds. Parrots flying around you all the time, making noise everywhere you go. And every time I saw something new, I still got excited about it, even after weeks there. At some point you stop reacting like it's unusual, but at the same time, it never really gets boring. While I was there, I also tried to learn a bit more about the Aboriginal culture. And what really stuck with me was that for many Aboriginal groups, the land isn't just something you live on or move through. It's actually part of the culture itself. Places are connected to stories, ancestors and knowledge that gets passed down over generations. So it's not just a mountain or a river. It's more like the land itself is part of the identity. And I found it really interesting because coming from Europe, I've never really thought about nature in that way. For me, nature is usually something you go to, experience and then leave again. But there it felt like something you live with, not something you separate yourself from. And that was something I was really curious about on this trip, just trying to understand that relationship a bit more. And one of the biggest highlights for me was definitely Uluru. Before going there, I just had this image in my head of a huge rock in the middle of the desert. And yeah, it is that. But when you actually stand there, it feels completely different. What made this experience even more awesome is that it was raining when I was there, which is apparently pretty rare. And suddenly the whole landscape changes when it starts raining. Water started running off the edges of Uluru, forming these massive streams and waterfalls that you would never expect in a place like that. I just remember standing there for a while, not really talking and just watching it happen. If you ever should decide to go to Australia, I want to encourage you to learn about the nature and the people who have lived in this place for thousands of years. It might even change the view you look at our planet and how we could live with nature instead of destroying it. When I think about what I love the most about traveling and training is the process behind it. Every time I drop into a new gym, it's interesting to see where I'm actually at. Just rolling with people from different places, with different styles and different levels. I feel like, especially when visiting a gym as a guest from outside, it is important to train without an ego. I'm here to learn and get new perspectives on the sport that I love. Trying things, getting a feel of how people train, move and how they approach the sport. I usually try to keep my rounds playful, especially when I'm training with someone for the first time. And if my partner passes my guard and taps me, it's okay. I want to learn and collect as much information as possible. If I get tapped in the process, so be it. Just show up, train and have fun. Get caught or maybe get not caught. So if I can give you one advice for traveling and training, don't go to a new gym trying to prove yourself. Instead, give yourself the chance to learn. You will see training this way will be much more effective and enjoyable overall. There's a time and place to prove yourself. Being a visitor at a gym is definitely not it. Every gym is different. Some gyms are super technicals, others are more competition focused. Some roll really hard every round, and in other places people are much more playful. None of them are necessarily better or worse, they're just different. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages of traveling for Jiu-Jitsu. Every gym exposes you to something new. Maybe it's a technique, maybe it's a different pace, or maybe it's just a different way of thinking about the game. It also reminds you that no matter where you're at, there's always another room where you're the beginner again. And I think that's a good thing. Those are usually the places where you learn the most. At the same time, it's crazy how connected the Jiu-Jitsu community is. You travel to the other side of the world, step onto the mats with people you've never met before, and after one round, it really feels like you have something in common. I think it's pretty special, and it's one of the main reasons why I want to keep traveling, keep training, and hopefully build a community around people who share the same passion. If you're interested in martial arts, fitness, and traveling, check out my other videos on the channel. Muay Thai in Thailand, BJJ in Brazil, kickboxing in Poland, countless mobility routines to keep your body healthy, and more. Let's come together and build a community of traveling athletes.